All right. I think we can get started. I'm sure some other people will be joining us, but good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today and taking the time for our session on leveraging AI in grant and funding management. We know that for many of you, the idea of integrating AI into your funding programs is both exciting and probably a little bit daunting. So our goal today is to kind of demystify some of the fears that you might have, and show you some of the process that you can take and some of the principles and tools that can drive efficiency and impact in your organization. So my name is Michael Mnuchin. I'm the Vice President of Client Services for the ePerformance business unit here at Kofumo. And I'm joined by Divya Ramachandran, our Director of Client Services and Customer Success. Divya specializes in ensuring that our solutions not only work technically, but deliver real, tangible success for our clients and our stakeholders. And she will be showing us in the system some examples of how AI can be leveraged a little bit later on in the presentation. So, at ePerformance, powered by Kofumo, our goal is simple: to empower organizations to drive innovation through collaborative thinking and the latest Microsoft technologies. So our core focus is within the Microsoft Power Platform. So the solution that we're going to be discussing today, not only with AI and Microsoft Copilot, is our product called Grant Plus, and we'll get to that later on in the presentation. We have a strong history in public sector, advancing automation since 2000. Our core mission has always been to help government organizations transform how they deliver services, making them more efficient, cost-effective, and focused on the people that they serve. As of May 2025, we joined Kofumo, one of Canada's leading IT and business transformation providers, and it has allowed us to strengthen our goal and extend our capabilities to deliver personalized digital solutions and to significantly reinforce our Microsoft practice to better serve our clients. In that relationship, we've kind of grown to be a well-respected Microsoft partner. We were before, but now we have many more individuals that are Microsoft certified professionals and many other advantages that come with that merger. So, while the government domain has the unique needs and domains, ranging from public safety all the way to arts and culture, the actual delivery model for grants across all of those things follow kind of a universal pattern. Regardless of the sector, the lifestyle almost always begins with program design, as you see on the far left-hand side there, and obviously the intake of information from the applicants. Then it moves through to the review of that information, that submission form that's basically coming in with all of that information on the client, whether it be an organization or an individual. And then the agreement that is formed if they pass the process, if they pass that assessment and review, and are going to be awarded money, the agreement comes next, and then settles into the operational phases of the administration of that. So the actual nuts and bolts of how you get that person or that organization funding. And then, of course, the performance monitoring that comes from that. So reviewing how that money is being spent, reviewing how it, what benefits that are coming from that funding, etc. So understanding the standardized framework is really key because, while we might tweak specific things like application forms or specifics to the review process, etc., the functionality, the core architecture of what we're talking about for a grants and contributions program, it remains pretty consistent, and that's kind of what our product shines at. So integrating AI and automation isn't just a technical upgrade, it's a fundamental shift in processing power. It has the potential to redefine how we approach the entire landscape of funding management and allocation, making it faster and more precise. Now that getting on board with AI can seem daunting, especially if you don't have a deep technical background, but it's easy to feel overwhelmed from it. However, the benefits here simply are too significant to ignore. We are talking about streamlining complex processes and enhancing decision-making in ways that manual methods just can't match. I'm sure we've all, ran some examples through, ChatGPT or Gemini, and are amazed by, the processing power, the speed in which we can find the answers we're looking for, etc. So it's no different when it comes to Microsoft Copilot and how it can be utilized within the framework of grants management as well. So the key to success isn't just using AI, it's about thoughtful and responsible implementation. We need to focus on automated best practices that are ethical and accessible. Most importantly, we must use these tools to empower our use specifically and the program officers and the funding officers, ensuring they harness this potential to deliver real value. So a key important that you'll see feathered throughout the presentation is this is not to replace the subject matter experts, being the program officers and the funding officers. It's to empower them by removing some of the mundane and allowing them to focus on what matters the most. So a successful grants management system isn't just about sorting data. It's about integrating technology to lower workloads. Specifically, we see AI adding value in 4 distinct areas. Efficiency. So first, we look at reducing repetitive manual tasks by automating routine work like data entry and compliance checks. We can take processes that used to consume days of effort and complete them in mere hours, freeing your team for strategic work, or even instantly when it comes to intake forms. It can really simplify the work and the assessment, making sure that it's only good data in and not bad data in. Decisions. So next we enhance the decision making. So grant assessment can be complex and non-intuitive. AI helps by applying predefined criteria to produce objective assessment, which significantly reduces the potential for human bias and error. So you can train the system to look for certain things, and you can ensure that it's being fair and not compromised by, an individual that brings a lot of emotion to things. Even though that usually is not the case, this can definitely protect against that. Analytics. Then there's the ability to gather insights from complex data. This is a huge strength. So AI tools can analyze patterns across massive data sets to predict funding trends and measure real-world success of your programs, helping you optimize further future strategies. Excuse me. So this is a very useful tool, not only because the importance of the data, but bringing forward the most important information that potentially could be overlooked if you didn't have the right reports, if you didn't have the right analytics. This can bring the important things to the forefront so that you're seeing everything. And then finally, there's collaboration. We use these tools to improve collaboration. By providing real-time updates and insights, we facilitate better communication and transparency, not only internally between the grant managers, the program staff, the finance officers, but also with the applicants and reviewers. So they're informed throughout the whole process, and they know kind of where they stand within the program. Transparency is always a good thing. So utilizing AI could bring a substantial opportunity for grantors to enhance the impact of their initiatives, streamline processes, and promote transparency and accountability in grant management process. So we can break down the AI opportunity for efficiencies in a few examples. The first couple being organizational efficiency, which improves how we work, and operational efficiency, which improves the results we get. So AI-powered tools can assist applicants by offering text suggestions and translation support. So a potential thing that could be in the future, which is, no longer would you need an applicant to submit in just French or English the standards for Canadian government, but if their native language was something else, you would enable them to be able to respond, using their native tongue, and you would be able to take in that application, understand it in the context of the language that you speak, and move forward with that, even if that they don't feel comfortable speaking English or French. So that's a potential, what if opportunity. The enable automated review assessments using data analysis, behavioral analysis, and emotional pattern recognition. Ensure that grant processes comply with relevant laws and regulations. So you can keep that all very updated and point in time. Reduce the risk of legal challenges, enhance overall quality, maintaining compliance and integrity, and improve stakeholder satisfaction. A better user experience would be invaluable in the long run. So it makes it very easy to get feedback. Like the example I mentioned before would make the user experience more comforting if they could use their native language. And then operation efficiency. So measure the impact of funding by extracting valuable insights from performance data, assess the effectiveness of grants approved, and make data-driven adjustments for future initiatives. Provide decision support to grant officers and administrators by offering insights, recommendations, and risk assessments related to grants management. So again, being able to highlight these things to the officer, not make the decision for them. So to read through the static and receive the signal is the point here. Ensure resources are allocated strategically and responsibly. So it can also help with kind of the workload measure, which can be very, very beneficial. They're kind of like an automatic balancing. Next, we look at streamlining reviews. The immediate benefit here is speed. So AI can analyze large volumes of proposals, extracting key information and generating reports in a fraction of the time it takes for a human. So, measuring sentiment, pointing out key details, and again, reading through the information and making recommendations to be actioned by the officer, not automatically making the decision for them. It's not just about speed, though, it's about integrity as well. These tools can automatically flag inconsistencies that might indicate misrepresentation or attempts to game the system, so to speak, and ensure consistency and warning the officer if there's a case for review or concern with the applicant that they need to kind of reach out to them and seek more clarity on. So that all can be kind of highlighted and automated based off of the information that is being submitted. The system would kind of read that and recommend going back to them on clarity for certain items. Next is complementing human decisions. So crucially, we use this technology to complement the human decision, not replace them. So with proper training, your teams can leverage AI to handle the manual drudgery and saving hours of effort and reducing errors, saving clicks, saving time, typing things in, etc. That's the efficiencies that we're looking to gain here. And it frees the officers to focus on what they do best, applying their judgment to complex cases and ensuring resources are allocated effectively to support the stakeholders. Now, once the system is running, we need to ensure it's actually delivering value. So this brings us to monitoring efficiency. AI helps us optimize when we act by predicting the best time to release funds and assessing grantee performance in real time. We ensure resources are distributed correctly and proficiently. It also gives us clear benchmarks that we can see instantly, with the reduction in administrative workload and faster processing times, providing tangible proof of improvement. You'll be able to get more statistics on how fast it is to process a grant on average, things of that nature. And then finally, we look at scalability and adaptation. Government needs to evolve, and our systems must evolve with them. So AI allows you to analyze historical data to predict which areas require funding in the future. So it moves from kind of being on our heels reactive to kind of on our toes proactive, so we can identify trends, allocate grants to address pressing issues before the need arises, on its own, and you have to react to it. So the burning question for many I'm sure will be relevant to some of you is, timing. When do we do this? When is the right time to start? The answer is simple. You can get started right away, which is the nice thing. So you can iterate very easily with AI. So AI is no longer it's no longer a buzzword. Obviously, I'm pretty confident that most, if not all of us on the session today use it on a daily basis. The technology's matured to a point where it's stable, reliable, and capable of offering immediate substantial benefit. Not only, in writing tasks, but in comprehension tasks and beyond. So obviously you have to fact check it. It's not perfect, but it can help in many, many different areas, including grant management. So the technical barrier, the entry has never been lower. Thanks to cloud technology and low code options, you no longer need a team of data scientists, excuse me, to get started. Modern tools come with user-friendly interfaces, I'm sure we're all familiar with, and specifically for non-technical users. This means your administrator and decision makers can leverage these capabilities kind of right away out of the box without needing to code anything specific. And then finally, there's the ethical dilemma. So as we prioritize responsible AI, adopting these tools now allows you to build governance and framework from the ground up, which is a good thing. And by integrating ethical standards early, you ensure that your decisions that impact communities are fair, transparent, and accountable. So every department is going to be a little bit different until there's a universal model you have to follow. The good thing about that is the ability to iterate and to get started right away, which is free. So the competitive landscape, beyond the technology, there's a competitive reality. Adopting AI right now offers a distinct first mover advantage. Other organizations they're going to begin to start testing the software and iterate as well. So the standard and speed of accuracy will rise. So not only will other organizations begin to use this, but the expectation from the end user will increase rapidly because of the information that they are available to get from on their end specifically as well. So we're likely to see these service times and the expectations move faster. Those who delay won't just stay the same, they will actively fall behind and finding themselves at a disadvantage compared to the peers who can deliver services faster and more accurately. Again, so if individuals or organizations are dealing with other departments for other things, even services that are outside of the government purview that are similar, their service levels, our expectation is going to rise pretty significantly now with all of these tools, because we know that, though from the broad spectrum, everybody's going to be experiencing some capacity of AI improvement to the softwares that end users use. So by using AI to slash administrative overhead, you aren't just saving time, you're reallocating your funds and your efforts. You ensure that a larger percentage of your budget goes directly to your core mission and the communities that you serve, rather being consumed by back office processing and the manual minutia that you once had to kind of focus on. So adopting AI is a journey. You need high quality data because bad data leads to poor results. So we spoke about earlier that protecting bad data in and only getting good data in. We can help assess your governance to ensure you leverage these tools effectively. We've discussed the why and the when, and now we need to ask, am I ready? Am I ready to include this in my workflow? And it's not about just buying the software. It really truly requires 4 specific organizational pillars, we believe. And it starts with data governance. So the rule here is simple. Bad data equals poor results. So if you're measuring something that's inaccurate, your measurement is going to be inaccurate by nature. So before you automate, you need a framework that ensures your data is consistent, accurate, and clean. then it's all good data in, and you have a very, very good foundation to start from. Next, do you have a centralized repository? So AI struggles from taking information from all different places. So to make it the most efficient, you need to ensure that your program initiatives and funding sources are consolidated, and the single source of truth is in one place rather than scattered across different departments. This can be tricky for some departments, but generally speaking, each department knows specifically what the single source of truth is. Third is cultural readiness. This is the human element. The users in the back office. Is your organization open to change? Specifically, are you ready to support non-technical users and teach them how to use these new tools and advancements? And because the success of this really, really relies on them using it to their advantage and being able to unlock those efficiencies that we've mentioned before. And then finally, ethical oversight. So before flipping the switch, turning on AI, you must have regulations in place to ensure fairness and accountability. We need to know that the system is equitable before we let the AI influence decisions. So by its nature, it's going to be influencing decisions by presenting information. We need to we need to be clear that that is ethical and that the system is accurate in what it's displaying. So, despite AI's numerous benefits, organizations are bound to face issues when implementing any solution. So, the responsible use of AI must comply with internal and governmental regulations to ensure fairness and accountability. Being aware of potential biases in AI algorithms can ensure organizations can take steps to mitigate them. Enabling responsible AI implementation not only enhances productivity, but also empowers users to become active participants in digital transformation journey, ultimately leading to more successful grant outcomes. In grant management, decisions can have significant impacts on people and organizations. For example, when AI is used to evaluate grants applications, it should be programmed to assess applications based on objective criteria rather than subjective or biased data inputs. By prioritizing responsible AI implementation, systems can be created that are non-discriminatory, neutral, and thus building trust among users and stakeholders while ensuring the benefits of AI are accessible to all. So that's another important point is, the ability to pivot within the system. It's going to learn from what you train it on. So as long as we're consistently looking at it and ensuring that it's being responsible and the information that it's giving back is sound, you can proceed forward. And if not, you can train it on more reasonable and responsible information. So we believe that there are 5 important pillars to factoring in responsible AI implementation. So it starts with data governance. AI relies entirely on the quality of its inputs, as we've mentioned, throughout the day. We must establish a centralized repository, a one-stop data shop that consolidates all funding sources and program initiatives into a clean, high-quality data model. This is kind of the foundation. Next is stakeholder engagement. We need to prioritize transparency. Users need to trust the system, which means AI must be explainable and not a black box. Continuous feedback loops must be maintained to ensure the system is actually serving the needs of the community and its users. Then audits and oversight. So AI provides recommendations, but it lacks human nuance. We need to ensure that the final strategic decisions always require human judgment. Regular ethical audits help us prevent bias and ensure data privacy remains secure. So it's important that the final say is done by a human and the final judgment is done by a human. Fourth is user training. This isn't just about teaching people where to click. It's about teaching critical thinking with the information that's being presented to them. We train officers on how to interpret AI-generated insights so they can make informed, valid decisions based on the recommendations provided. And they're not just listening to the system or the data that's being presented to them verbatim. They're making their own conscious decisions based off of the information that's being presented to them to be more efficient. And then finally, user-friendly tools. If the system is too complex, it's not going to be used. So it's very important to design intuitive interfaces specifically for non-technical staff, removing the intimidation factor and allowing the team to interact with complex machine learning algorithms simply and easily. So making it a system that users both front and back end would like to use instead of making it a big technical hill to climb. So we're about to jump into kind of the system demonstration, and Divya is going to take us through some examples. But first, a little bit about the specific product that you're going to see in some ways, which is called Grant Plus. Grant Plus is a cloud-based software application leveraging Microsoft Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform to support the automation of government grants management. It provides a full range of functionality for grants management end-to-end workflows, including client application processing, review and approval, agreements administration, and performance tracking. So the full suite of what we covered today earlier in the process flow, grants management has a foundation of that process, very easily adaptable, very flexible to the various different domains that we discussed earlier as well. It is designed for Canadian government and can be further configured to meet the unique requirements of any granting organization. So it doesn't have to be government, can be kind of any grants and contributions program out there. It's very, very flexible and adaptable. Very large data set and many different controls can be used. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Divya and she can take us through the examples she has created today.
Thank you, Michael. So in the past half an hour, you've been listening to what is possible to do with AI. Are you ready for AI implementation? How does that impact you from a grants management perspective? Considering all of that, we've put together a few different scenarios that pertain to grants management specifically and how it can ease some of the manual and repetitive tasks that you may encounter on a daily basis. Each department is different, each organization is different. So maybe looking at these scenarios, it might encourage you to think about how this can impact your grants management processes and your business processes and your daily users, like your program officers, your funding officers, the different advisors, and how they can benefit from using not only automation, but also maybe Grant Plus as a system for the entire grants management process, which provides like a one-stop shop for all of the grants applications, reviews, as Michael mentioned, the entire end-to-end process. So we've got a few scenarios that we've come up with in terms of how automation and AI or AI can benefit your daily tasks for funding, for grants management, any repetitive tasks that you may have, typically seen through the different clients that we've interacted with, and just understanding how AI implementation works, what the benefits are, what the downfalls are, things like that. So first off, I'll start with the smart virtual assistant. You may have seen different websites have a chatbot that is available right off the bat to help you assist the different public users in terms of like answering some basic questions, things that you manually or like as a human being don't necessarily need to interact with because they are repeated questions. They are questions that are already available on the website and through the FAQ documentation, but it just provides a little bit more kind of an interactive experience for the public users. So what we've set up is a similar chatbot. Just a word of caution that it's still something that we're previewing with the different technology that is available on the Power Platform. But the idea is to think about it in terms of what your users will want to see. So if I suppose, say, we are using one of our platforms called the Scholarship Platform for Grant Plus. And it basically is an awards management tool, which is something that is provided for funding for awards. So if I was talking about, like, if I'm the public user, I'm coming in, I want to apply for an award application. I just want to know some of the basic information. So for example, my mouse, okay. Sorry, okay. So if I say, how is the program funded, for example, the AI tool will look through the information and the sources of information that it has been configured with, and provide the information in terms of a basic package that the end user can assess and read through and understand better what the app program funding is all about. It also provides reference sources. In this case, it's providing you a reference source. We're looking into options where we hide the reference source, for example. We just provide the answer, we don't provide a reference source. There are a few different options that we're looking at on that front. But if you just look through in terms of what typically the public would ask. So if I say, when can I get back about my application? It looks through the resources again and identifies, okay, this is a question that is provided in terms of the source, but um, what if, what happens? So if the user gets creative, what happens after September 2026? And there is no like predefined answer to that. The AI tool, what it does is it predicts that response and provides that information depending on what your source of information already has, and then provides a little bit more in terms of context related to that. Additionally, because we are, like, as Michael mentioned, the system is set up for a bilingual environment. We do have something that we're looking at in terms of setting up the bot for the French users. So if the French user logs in, or as is like the page is set up in French, and I ask the question directly in French, the bot is knowledgeable enough to make sure that the response that it provides is, the source is the French documentation that it has, but also the response that it provides is a little bit in French. As you can see, I did mention that this is a tool that's a little bit in preview. That's why you notice that it's not fully bilingual. It's not fully French. It does have like English options available on the chatbot. Ideally, it wouldn't have those English translations. So we're exploring a little bit more in terms of how we can set that up by default in terms of what Power Platform provides, or like what can be customized to make it completely bilingual based on the language that the user is going to see. Because we don't want users to be sitting in the French portal and seeing English text, ideally, right? So that's one scenario that we've looked at. A lot of different options in terms of what kind of response, how the response is provided to the public user, to what extent they can contact the person, the program office. For example, does the chatbot automatically create an email and sends it to the program office based on a response? Is there any documentation that the user can input into the chatbot as they're talking to it that would go directly to the program office? So a lot of different options that are being considered in this aspect, just to make it something that is viewable and usable by the public, reducing a lot of the manual effort for the program office where they're answering questions manually each time they come in or each time an email comes in, right? The next one is something that we are looking at in terms of when you have a funding opportunity. There's a little bit of detail provided in that funding opportunity, right? Like in terms of what the eligibility criteria, what the review process is, etc. If I take an example of the college fund here, for example, and it provides like a long list of information. It provides a long list of information related to that funding opportunity. And it takes a bit of time to like craft the text properly, make sure all the areas are covered and things like that. So what we've looked into is automating a little bit of that manual process so that users can at least get a draft of that information. So for example, I have a funding opportunity here that I've just drafted and said it's the Ontario New Initiative Fund. I've done nothing to it. I have just basically opened and named it, put in the mandatory fields and left it at that. Okay. So now what I do is I say, okay, I have a flow here that I can run. And I give that flow a little bit of information in terms of what do I want this draft to look like. Okay. So if I just uh, input this information here, saying create a draft of the details based on the historical information that you have in the system, and then say run the flow. I give it a bit of time, like maybe a few minutes to craft it. As it runs in the background, what it does is it looks at all the historical information. As you noticed here, there's like 4 other funding opportunities in the system. Each of them has their own details, has their own eligibility options, things like that. And what it's doing is just compiling all of that information, assessing what is relevant um, for this funding opportunity that it's going to update. And just give it another couple of seconds here, do another refresh. As you can see, it's also translated um, automatically the English name of the funding opportunity. And if you notice here, it's created a content snippet. And in Power Platform, a content snippet is a block of text that is visible on the portal, right? So what it does is automatically, because it's going to be something that is published in the website for the public to see, it's drafted it as an HTML text file. Okay. So for example, if your admin user is creating the funding opportunity for you or your business user is creating it, it's got a draft based on the historical information. Now, the draft is, of course, like not applicable completely to the funding opportunity that is created, but it reduces a lot of the manual effort in terms of like typing out each line, drafting it in the HTML format, providing that to the advisors for review, things like that. So at least once it's drafted out, the administrator, the program officer who's in charge of designing the program and designing the funding opportunity can take this opportunity to just tweak as needed each of the information, maybe just add and copy and paste little bit of information. So a lot of like effort in terms of like maybe 7 hours that would take to draft this funding opportunity detail would be reduced to maybe half an hour. Similarly for French. Right now, we've just shown an example of creating it in English, but the system can automatically do the French aspect to it as well in terms of like running the flow, creating the French details, so that a lot of that effort in terms of the translation is also reduced. The translation, of course, might not be completely correct as it's system generated, but it reduces so much of the manual effort in terms of, as I said, manually typing it out from scratch for each and every word in English, right? So that's one of the scenarios that we identified, which should be useful. A lot of the administration overhead that will be reduced in terms of creating something like this. Another scenario we've identified is something called as the warning message that we have through the warning center on Grant Plus. So we at like Kofumo have in the Grant Plus solution have something called as the warning center that we've created. In terms of like, for example, last year we had a little bit of the strike information that needed to be communicated publicly as soon as, for example, Canada Post went on strike, or there was like immediate information that needed to be provided to the public in terms of there might be disruption, delay in the information, that kind of thing, right? Or for example, if there is a funding opportunity that is upcoming, it's an application deadline. You want to like draft a warning message to the public without taking too much effort into putting that information together. So for example, what I can do is I can run a flow similar to what I did before, right? I say the college fund, um, the college fund initiative Closing date is February, I think February 15th, February 17th, 2026. So it will draft, once I run the flow, what it will do is it will draft a message accordingly, create the warning message as a draft. So for example, I'm waiting for the flow to run. I look through it, see the information, and I just refresh it. And I see this here in terms of the college fund closing notice that is created. So as you can see, it's drafted something based on the instruction that was provided to it, right? Again, this is just a draft. It's not published to the portal because as Michael had mentioned, it's supposed to be complementing your human decision in terms of what it's supposed to publish versus like doing the actual task for you, especially when it comes to communicating certain aspects or certain things to the larger audience. It's always good to like consider drafting, using AI to draft, reduce the manual effort to create something versus actually asking AI to make that decision in certain situations. Certain situations, of course, the AI probably could make the decisions, but it's always good to be careful in these instances because you don't want the wrong date going out to the public and then trying to redo things afterwards. So, for example, I have this here. I'm going to say, I'm just going to say after this date on in February. I'm just going to make like a small edit to it and translate it in. I'm just doing basic translation in French. Apologies if it's not the exact correct translations. Okay. And I say, okay, say, okay, you know what? This is information only. Click publish. What I will do is identify a few seconds, wait for a few seconds and go to the portal that I showed you. So if I go back and go to the home page, once it's published, it will show as this kind of warning center for the public user. So you've reduced, like, especially in cases where it's like you need to inform the end user within like 1 hour, within 45 minutes, something like that. This is pretty useful because it allows you to automate drafting the message with minimal effort and then also publishing it almost immediately so that you don't have to wait for somebody technical to come in, do it for you, publish it for you, and then it goes through a whole cycle of a development loop, that kind of thing. So that's another scenario. And of course, this is just the warning center from a Grand Plus perspective that we have. If there are other scenarios that you have in your business processes that are very similar in terms of publishing things to the website, we can always look into that in terms of configuring it for your specific needs. Now, like one of the cooler features that it has is summarizing the applications and triaging applications that come in. So in your funding cycle, for example, 2026, there might be 200 plus applications coming in. There's a lot of information to process. You might have maybe 2 program officers for whatever reason that have to look through all 200 plus applications, see if it makes sense, whether the application is eligible or not. So a lot of that automation can be done in the system as well. So we have something here in terms of summarization that is done through AI. I'm just going to open it here, which what it does is as soon as the application is submitted, using certain predefined criteria. In this case, we've defined the certain criteria that it needs to look at. What it does is for each application, it automatically creates a summary for the program officer so that they can assess based on that summary. Maybe it provides the funding amount. Maybe it shows the start dates and the end dates, things like that. Maybe it shows certain criteria in terms of is it eligible or not. So that kind of summarization is really great for the program officer to have right off the bat so that it informs the next steps in terms of the decisions that they're going to make. If, for example, after reading this, the program officer says, you know what, I need to send this back to the applicant for amendment, and then the applicant submits it again, what you can do is it allows you to refresh the summary. So when the program officer comes back 3 days from now, 4 days from now, they want to see the latest summary. It can refresh and provide the latest summary based on the latest information, right? So that's a summarization. Now, once the summarization is over, we can also categorize the application into different sets. For example, I say based on the information that I've seen for this application, what they are asking for is 60,000 for funding requested. Okay. As soon as I say 60,000, as you can notice here, this was a blue category by default, but now it's become yellow. So for example, in this case, it's flagged it to be a yellow. It can be any other color or any other definition, but this as an example, it's triaged it based on the funding requested amount. So if the funding requested, for example, was greater than 100,000, it would triage it as red, things like that. The other aspect of triaging or categorizing is also assessing whether it's eligible or not. So for example, right now it says it's eligible not, but based on the information that I've provided, that makes sense. However, if I change the information based on the information, like based on the due diligence that I've done on the application, I say it's from June 2026 to say August 11th. Okay. So based on that, I noticed that after it saves the information, um, the process through, and you can see now it has become an eligible, it is eligible uh, to continue to the next steps. So right now, what we've done is just for this example, I have entered these fields manually, but based on the application itself, we can have a lot of this automated and pre-filled in as the information comes in through the application. Because a lot of information for the application might not be something that you're asking the end user. For example, the funding requested or an award that is provided has a fixed amount. You're not asking the user what the funding requested is because they're not going to be, that's not up to them, right? That kind of thing. So there's a lot of different nuances that can be considered based on your business processes. And accordingly, the system can be configured to be automated. If you want your program officers to be actually manually filling these in as well, that's completely doable as well. So there's a lot of different options in that sense. So this kind of allows you to triage, get quick categorization of the application. So if you have, for example, out of the 200, 150 of them are blue. Great. The blues can automatically proceed because you don't need to reassess them. But for example, I have a few of these that are red. They have already been categorized as red. So it means that there is a funding request of greater than 100,000, right? So what it does is the system automatically creates a task that is assigned to, for example, in this case, it's assigned to the team called the GMS Funding Advisor Activities, right? As soon as it sees a red on an application, it creates a task automatically, assigns it to the officer. In this case, it's assigned to me, who can look at it, review the submission, make sure that the submission has the right information, and then take an action on the submission and mark the task as closed. Right. The other option is also you can see it in a calendar format, so which is something that you can sync with your Outlook calendar. So if there is a task on this calendar in CRM, for example, you can add that task can automatically sync to your Outlook calendar, which means you know immediately, oh, I have to go and check this task. I have a number of tasks that I need to work through the day, right? So this kind of enables a lot of that internal processing that each individual program officer would probably have to make manually. Like they see, oh, 100,000, let me go manually create a task for the funding advisor team. Or if it's a blue and like the next decision has to go through a review process through other internal offices or teams, all of that manual process can be reduced by having the system automatically create and assign those tasks, maybe send emails, for example. I have an email here where when the flow triggered and said the um, application is not eligible, for example, right? AI interpreted as not eligible because we gave them the system, the predefined criteria. Now, based on that, it automatically created the email itself. Maybe you can have it created as a draft so that if you want to update any information before it sends out to Matthew here, for example, it can do that. So a lot of automation in terms of communication can be configured in the system where AI is doing most of the work for you, and then you're tweaking it, making certain updates here and there, and then sending out that information versus having to manually create the email, manually assess each application, things like that, right? So that covers that scenario. There's also dashboard insights. So Michael mentioned, like, based on the data, like you may have years of data that are present in your system, right? And a lot of different dashboards can be created. So I have an example dashboard here. A lot of this information can be used to create trend reports, can be used to assess what the next steps should be in your funding cycle, right? So for example, I have here, I already ran this before. So I took my dashboard and I did ask the AI tool to analyze it and give me an interpretation of what it thinks um, that the data actually tells about the system, right? So it took a lot of that information, created a complete draft of the explanation of what that dashboard means, provided that as a summarization for the program officer to assess, because then it can inform the next steps in terms of like the future funding cycles, in terms of the changes in the review process, maybe that might be needed. Certain things, metrics are not aligning, things like that. So a lot of different options on that front as well in terms of how AI can interpret your data and how it can inform decisions for your business processes, for the different funding cycles, for future development of features, etc. Right? And one of the last options that we have in terms of showing you an example is review analysis, right? So when you have a review process in your cycle, the idea is for the reviewer to be objective, provide their feedback in terms of like what they think the application information provided and what they think the future or the next step should be, right? So we have a process here where automatically, once the review is submitted, it AI looks at the information of the reviewer that the reviewer has provided. So in this case, by reading it, it automatically says the sentiment is positive, right? But just from a program office perspective, just having that quick interpretation allows the program officer to assess whether they need to deep dive into the review and make it, like, for example, redact any of the information before it goes to the next step, right? For example, this one, the sentiment is negative. So why is the sentiment negative? So then the program officer can do a little more digging into what is written in the review process and see if they need to redact any of that information, or maybe just cancel the review, or like because of the way the review has been written, and assess that maybe this review is not ideal from an objective perspective, right? So a lot of different options there as well. We've just used, like, for example, one field. We can use like 15 different fields to assess the sentiment or the bias based on the different, because reviews may not just be like just focused on the one comments field. It may be varied depending on the different criteria, right? So that's another example related to that. Um, just to quickly finish off here, um, this is kind of a generic webinar showing you what we interpret as possible scenarios for putting in AI and putting in automation in general for grants management, right? But we can build a custom Grant Plus demo just for your business processes and your benefit so that you can see it in action based on what your daily activities are going to be, your daily user interaction is going to be, right? So you can see your process. As we mentioned, it is designed for the Canadian government, but it has a lot of configuration options to make it as per your processes. We can focus on certain areas, or we can focus on the entire end to end. It's completely up to you. And then we can also tailor it according to your domain. Like we've done contributions, loans, awards, um, different options. So depending on what your domain, your system works on, we can tailor the demo according to that. Just a quick summarization based on what Michael and I mentioned through um, the webinar today. A lot of potential in terms of AI, in terms of efficiency, in terms of accuracy and fairness, and having the possibility to empower users through like intuitive design, providing a forum where it's transparent in terms of how the decisions are made, things like that, and just fostering a better environment in the grant management process, which doesn't look at biased information, but also uses tools that improve user output and outcome, while also maintaining the integrity of the system. We have 2 minutes, and this is the information if you would like to reach us after the webinar. Please don't hesitate to email us or like visit our websites. If anyone has any questions right now, please let us know, or we can also communicate externally through email or through our websites that are provided here. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your time, everybody. Have a good day.